Okay. We have no one signed up on the formal sign-up sheet, but if there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this public hearing, you can feel free to state your name and address and speak to this. Okay. And I guess if there's nothing further, we'll close the public hearing. Right? Nothing further? Okay. Public hearing is closed. That was a very bad gavel. Okay. And we have to wait, I think,
2 minutes.
2 minutes for the next public hearing. I always think it's amazing. Look at that, the total. That's amazing.
So that's part of it.
Requested, and it's not what they get.
Do you want to say you gave your name?
Watch it.
Duck.
Okay, this one, can you give this to Essie?
Whoa.
Gosh, from this angle, it looked so close. Did you feel it?
Are you going to be using? No? Okay. All right.
Let me know when we're good to go. One more minute.
There they
Okay. All right, 7:15. We will call the public hearing to order, 7:15, application on 527 Prospect Avenue. This is an application on behalf of 527 Prospect LLC, owner of 527 Prospect Avenue, to amend SDD number 123 to permit an approximately 984 square foot, two-story addition for expanded office space. Associated landscaping, parking, and drainage improvements are proposed. Roll call, Mr. Burrow.
Mr. Barnes.
Present.
Ms. Cantor.
Here.
Mr. Davidoff.
Here.
Mr. Dunn.
Is absent, and Ms. Fay?
Here.
Ms. Kerrigan? In place of Mr. Sweeney, we have Mr. Stafford? Mr. Winograd? And Mr. Williams.
Here.
Thank you, Ms. LeBron, and thank you for Mr. Stafford for being here. We will start with an application, a presentation from the applicant.
Thank you, Mayor Cantor. Good evening, honorable members of the council. My name is Bill Crow. I'm Lou Wise's partner of the law firm Rojan Nassau in Hartford. And as the mayor has pointed out, we're here representing the applicant, 527 Prospect Avenue, LLC. Justin Packard from the engineering firm Hallisey Pearson et al. Will give you a slightly more factual presentation. I'm here essentially to point out that we're seeking two minor waivers to amend the existing special development district. One would be a side yard waiver of about 5 feet because the setback under the existing zoning regs would be 14 feet, and the setback after the expansion that we're proposing would be 9 feet. Under the existing zoning regs for the applicable zone, the RO zone, we would need one additional parking space. We're seeking a waiver for that, essentially for the reason that many of the clients and the employees of the law firm present in the location right now park on Prospect, which is more convenient and seems to be plentiful and doesn't present any problems. So we're seeking that waiver. We would point out to you that the plan has been endorsed by the Design Review Advisory Committee, has also been endorsed by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we are grateful to town staff for quickly turning around. There were some additional engineering comments which the engineers, Justin and his crew, have addressed, and as of this afternoon, I'm pleased to report that we have gotten our final engineering sign-offs for what it is that we propose to do. We think the plan is in harmony with the RO zone, the town plan of development. We think that the plan we're proposing is superior to what could be done without the waivers that we're seeking, and we think that this will be an enhancement to the neighborhood and be contextual with what's happening with the large, wonderful structures, the old structures along Prospect. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Justin Packard, and obviously either Justin or myself can answer any questions. Thank you.
Just for the record, my name's Justin Packard. I'm a civil engineer with Halsey Pearson Cassidy Engineering Associates out of Cromwell. Here tonight talking about a couple of the site improvements to 527 Prospect Avenue. So as Will mentioned, we are proposing to add a two-story addition to the southern side of the existing building. On this plan in front of you, you'll see that the darker brown hatched area is the existing building, and the light brown hatched area would be the proposed addition. Something that we're going to have to change in regards to the site is the existing stormwater system, because is there something I can talk to over here? Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right, so existing conditions, there is presently a catch basin in the rear portion of the parking area here. And then there's also an existing yard drain in the front yard up here in front of the addition. And there's a existing line that runs between the two structures, which would run right through our proposed addition. So in order to compensate for this, we are proposing to add two new yard drains into the side yard area. They'd be located just off the corner of each of the corners of the addition. That way we can route the existing stormwater system around the addition and tie back into the existing yard drain out front in the front yard, or the green area out in this area here. In addition to this, we are going to have to propose a underground detention system. It will be a very small system relative, because all we're looking to get out of it is the runoff from the proposed addition's roof. So the runoff from the roof would flow down the roof into the roof leaders on each corner of the addition, and then into the underground detention system, and that would then be tied back into the existing yard drain out in the front of the property. In terms of landscaping for this project, we're not proposing a whole lot except existing. There is a small tree right out in front of where we're proposing to have the addition in the front yard. And that also happens to fall right on top of where we're trying to put the underground detention system. So we're proposing to relocate that existing tree from closer to the building out further away towards the front building line of the street, about even with the existing tree that's already out on the front building line of the street. And in addition to this, there's a bunch of shrubs and flowers that are lining the existing building currently, and we're proposing to extend that planting out past and into the edge of the new addition to kind of tie the two buildings together, so that'll be the same plantings that are presently in front of the existing building today. So per the town requirements, like Will said, we would typically require that we need one more parking space on the site than we presently have today. On previous submittals, you might have seen a version where we were proposing a parking space along the existing driveway off in the front yard area over here. After talking to the Planning and Zoning Department, they feel that, or they recommended that we get that space waived actually. So presently we are requesting a waiver for that additional parking space. And then moving to the rear of the property, you'll see that we are also proposing a 3-foot by 5-foot concrete pad to the rear of the new addition and off the left-hand side of the parking area. This is for two trash bins, which they presently use, and it will be surrounded by a wooden fence that we're proposing to match the existing wooden fence that runs along the western property, or to the rear of the property up here. So that 3x5 trash concrete pad would be screened in from the surroundings. And then finally, we've gotten a handful of comments from the town staff, mainly engineering department, regarding mostly drainage and the underground detention system. We feel that we have addressed all of their comments. They actually came out with a letter today saying that we've addressed all of the engineering department's comments, and we have also issued response letters for all of the comments that we received. So we'd greatly appreciate your approval of the project tonight, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for us.
Thank you, Mr. Packard. Are there any questions for Mr. Davidoff?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening. I've got some questions as to the timeline for this application, because it's sort of not adding up to me when I went to review all the documents. So the plans were submitted, I saw like they had a date of 3/1 on them, and then they were submitted on 3/21. And the TPZ met on May 6th, and the TPZ sent us their letter of referral approval on 5/14. DRAC met on 5/2, which was May 2nd. They sent their letter to us on 5/6. There was a memo from the town engineer on 5/15 on outstanding issues. And then there was a response by the engineer on May 21st after DRAC and TPZ came. And then today, there were more back and forth with the engineering department. So can you just give me a clarification as to why this time frame for this application, which I'm not talking about the merits, I just want to understand, were there issues in terms of resolving issues with town staff or with the applicants?
No, I believe actually that town staff had
Make sure you speak into the mic, thank you.
I believe town staff had additional comments and questions last Friday afternoon, the 24th, in anticipation of tonight's meeting. And we appreciate town staff jumping on that on the eve of a holiday weekend. And then our engineers were able to, given the nature of the comments and the inquiries, come back with answers today. And town staff was kind enough to look at the answers today and essentially agree with the response.
Okay, so what I'm referring to is on 5/15, there's a response dated 5/21 from the engineering firm to the town planner's memo of 5/15, which was after the TPZ meeting and the TPZ referral. So I'm a little confused as to why we had all these other additional comments from the planner after.
I believe that the spirit of the issues in P&Z from a macro point of view signed off, I believe, subject to final clarification from town staff, particularly engineering, on drainage calculations and I believe the location of trash receptacles. So my understanding is that what P&Z did was to approve subject to final clarification and sign off from town staff, and town staff was still working through some of the design details on the engineering with the applicant's engineering firm.
All right, well, you may be correct in your understanding, but there's nothing in the packet that we received that indicates that, because it just said,
Really have to speak into the mic though, so it can be on the record.
because according to the TPZ's transmittal letter to us, it said the TPZ supports the waiver of additional front yard parking space, and that's all we got. So there was no mention of any engineering or other stormwater management issues with respect to this application.
Mr. Hart has a comment.
You have the May 15th letter addressed to us as council from the town planner.
Nope.
I have a copy of a letter to my partner Lou Wise from the town planner dated May 15th, evaluating correspondence and plans and making comments for consideration. And then those issues were addressed.
So that's the letter to Attorney Wise from Mr. Dumais, correct?
Correct. And then that letter set off a series of responses from Justin and his colleagues. Which I think ultimately ended in the resolution of last week and today.
So was there an entire presentation to the TPZ, or was this done under the town planner's reports with respect to this?
I don't think it was an entire presentation.
All right, so-
I do know that it was approved by P and Z, again, subject to the caveats, the town engineer signing off. I don't know that it was a full presentation that was made.
Okay. All right, so those are my questions on procedure, so I'll just go with the additional testimony that you just gave us. Now, with respect to the parking, the site requires how many spots?
Good.
It requires 8 spots, and we have 7 presently on site.
Okay. Now, and there was some mention during the presentation that you made that you're going to use Prospect Avenue for employee and client parking? Or you currently use?
I believe, I know a couple of the employees currently use Prospect Avenue as parking. I believe 2 of them do, but I'm not sure. I can't answer if that's going to keep occurring or, as far as I know, what they have now works for them, and they're not proposing to have any new employees with the addition. So,
All right, so there's an additional almost 1,000 square feet of office space being created, correct?
yes,
But we're not anticipating any increase in employees in terms of attorneys or administrative staff or anything?
not
like
at this
that?
time.
And has there been any issues when there's a parking ban in place where you can't park on the street?
Not that I've heard of. I know usually they have actual extra spaces in the rear. Some of their employees just prefer to park on the street because it's easier access to the front of the building.
Now, are you still going to put in the pavers that can permeate?
If you were to waive the parking area, we would keep that as lawn space
Without the pavers?
without the pavers, correct?
What would be the additional cost to have the pavers installed?
I'm not 100% sure on the additional cost of the pavers, but I do know it would have a slight effect on the drainage because pavers aren't going to infiltrate as much as lawn space will.
Correct. Okay. Thank you for your answers. I appreciate them.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Davidoff. Mr. Barnes?
Thank you. Just a couple questions about the notice to the neighbors. I see some correspondence that there was an original letter sent to the neighbors advising them of an opportunity to review the plans at the office at the end of April. By letter to us dated May 8th, you reported that only one neighbor attended the meeting.
Correct. Do you have a copy of our letter to you guys dated May 8th reporting on that?
Yep.
Yes, I talked to Lou this afternoon, who would talk to the client, and one neighbor did show up, and one neighbor essentially said, I'm glad they don't park on my street, they park on Prospect, and generally, and I'm paraphrasing, supported the plan.
Okay. And so,
But a letter inviting the neighbors to a presentation, if you will, or just an opportunity to review the plans was sent to all the neighbors in basically the block surrounding the subject property, and only one showed up.
okay. And based upon your answer, about what the neighbor had to say. I assume it's not the neighbor to the south who is the abutting landowner.
This was a neighbor who lives on Lowell Road, and not the neighbor to the south with respect to the side yard. Although I did specifically ask Louis, and of course this is hearsay because that's one law partner to another, that the neighbor with respect to the side yard waiver generally is in support of the application. But other than me telling you that my law partner told me this a few hours ago, I don't have any evidence to that effect at all.
Okay, so you don't have any evidence to support one way or the other what the position?
Yes, I've received no objections from anybody that we're aware of with respect to our application.
Okay, and just for clarification, what do you mean by generally supports? Are you just taking that kind of middle ground because you didn't actually have the conversation, or was it they had some concerns, but, for the most part?
My
they're okay with it?
understanding is that the neighbor, the immediate next door neighbor, I think sold our guys the property years ago, supports this application because it supports the success of the neighboring property under the theory that what's good for my neighbor is good for me. And now I'm starting to get into a bit of a paraphrase, but no specific objection was raised with respect to the side yard waiver that we're seeking, and the general expression of support was that we like what you're doing to the property we sold you. We think it's respectful of the house itself, the structure, the neighborhood, the way it presents to the street, and we think it will inure to our benefit as your neighbor to have you expand the structure.
Okay, so based upon that answer, they have notice of this proposed change, and if they wanted to object, they had the letter and they
To
knew how
go
to
slightly in
do
the
it?
direction of being a cynical land use lawyer, my prediction would be if they wanted to object, they would be standing up shortly to say, we disagree with everything council just said, but that's a surmise.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Lair?
Not so much a question, Madam Mayor, as an observation on page 2 of 5 of the plans that were submitted today. Bottom center of the sheet, the parking data schedule proposed shows 8 required spaces, and then it says total parking spaces provided 8. And I think that's been amended to that's a typo. Can you just put that on the record?
Yeah, that's a typo. We'll have to update the plan following approval.
Thank you, Mr. O'Leary. Okay. Any other questions? All right, we do have a sign-up sheet. We have 2 people that have signed up. This is not an attendance sheet, it's actually a sign-up to speak. You can speak to this public hearing. And the first person I have signed up is Edward, is it Wiegand?
Thank you.
Wiegand, sorry. I know. Just said.
Mayor Cantor, members of the Town Council, good evening. My name is Edward Wiegand, raised in West Hartford. Charter Oak, Talcott, Conard. Owner of 521 Prospect, together with my sister Barbara Bergman, who was unable to be here. She wasn't aware of the meeting. We are the southerly neighbors of 527 Prospect LLC, attorneys Walsh and Woodard. We are actually the former owners, as it's just been said, that sold them this property back in 2011. 521 Prospect has been in our family for 43 years. 527 Prospect for 32 years prior to the sale. During this entire time, we have always maintained our properties with pride. These buildings are from a different era and reflect a certain charm just not found anymore. When the attorneys went before the town council back in 2012, we were present. We reviewed all of the proposed plans for that major renovation and expansion. We at that time blessed their proposal. We observed the entire construction process and saw what a wonderful job they did in the end. We've maintained good relations with our neighbors. Just last year, they proposed purchasing a portion of our property with roughly the equivalent of what would then allow them to construct the same and fall within the town's setback requirements. We declined the offer as is would be extraordinarily close to our building. The town's setback requirements are the absolute minimums for a purpose. Reducing those minimums in any amount would be unfair to us as a neighbor or any other adjoining neighbor. In reviewing these last-minute revisions this afternoon, I see now that they added an HVAC unit to the side, which further expands its footprint, which appears to be an additional 3 feet, if it's the same dimensions as the slab that they're going to put the garbage on, which would be 5.9 feet from my boundary. I also noted in the latest revision is that they're moving their trash receptacles to my property line. We do have objection to this proposed addition, mainly due to the proximity of the addition and the enormity of it. Even if this addition remained within the town's minimum setback requirements, it would be unsightly and not flow within harmony of the neighborhood, and anything less than that would certainly be a detriment to our property. In the application to the town council dated March 21st, the applicants were to meet with the neighbors. We never received an invitation. I don't know what happened last time. We got certified mail, but we never received an invitation because I would have been there. So the first we learned of this is when we got the letter from the town council notifying us of tonight's hearing. That's why Barbara couldn't be here. She's already down south with her son, and therefore I'm the only one present. In the application under zoning, they approximate the requested setback of 9 feet. It's actually 8.9, and I am counting every inch. Under the application findings, item number 1, I disagree with the statement that this plan is harmonious for that within this RO zone. I don't think it is. Under the application findings, item number 2, I absolutely agree that this plan is superior to one allowed by the town's regular standards for zoning regulation. The request is asking the town to lower this standard. Please don't. Item number 3, under the application findings, I disagree that this plan is in harmony with the adjacent properties and does change the character of the surrounding neighborhoods, because it just does. I appreciate the town council's time in hearing me this evening and sincerely request that the town's standards for zoning and regulations not be lowered, and enforce it for the reasons and purposes that it was created. Now, of course, I have to note, it's being spoken for, I'm going to clear that up. Generally in support, as Lou Weiss's partner had stated that this neighbor would probably be, and I have been, and we've been good neighbors. We toured their property, they toured ours. They did a wonderful job. We're very proud of what they did. This project, I am not in support of at all, again, for all the reasons I'd mentioned. What is good for my neighbor is good for me, not in this situation. This building would be way too close, it's way too big, it's way too much, and everything did happen way too fast here, and I don't know why. There's speaking this evening of additional drainage and stuff I have no idea with. I put that original sewer system in, because that's what the town asked us to do back then. I actually have 2 lines tied from my gutters at 521 Prospect that runs into that. So any work to be done, if they'd ever got that far, is something that needs to be recorded tonight and maintained. And a few other new things that popped tonight that I had not had the opportunity to review, and on these drawings, it's kind of vague, and the best ones to look at are the ones I got online, because you can explode the PDF file and see all these dimensions as they lay out. We are not in support of this for those reasons. I appreciate everybody listening to me tonight, and I truly hope that you see the way we see things as being good neighbors and taxpayers in this town for all this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Weigand. The next person that signed up to speak is Jean Fletcher. And I think Ms. Fletcher has a Hartford address. We just need to suspend the rules to allow you to speak.
Oh, well, thank you. Okay.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. You're up.
Thank you. Yeah, I live in Hartford. I'm at 530 Prospect Ave, which is directly across from the property that you're talking about. And I've lived there since 1995. I'm the owner and occupant. So my issue with the proposed change is not really the building, because I'm not directly affected by that, although I'm not in favor of more largeness across the street. My main concern, and I wrote to the council about this, I hope you got the letter, is the traffic and parking on the street. That section of Prospect is one of the worst traffic areas I've ever seen. We had several deaths at the intersection because of poor drivers. We've got a four-way stop now that a lot of people don't pay any attention to. There's on-street parking allowed, and I will take objection to the statement that was made that 2 or so employees at the 527 park on the street. It's more like 5 to 7. So my main question starting out tonight was, how will the addition of one required parking space alleviate the on-street parking in front of my house, in front of 527? And I didn't understand how just one more parking space would be required. But apparently the resolution or the solution is for everybody to park on Prospect Avenue rather than use their own parking lot. So the traffic there is my main concern. And will the addition cause any additional traffic? Apparently not, because they're not going to have any more employees or attorneys. But, so that means they won't have any more clients? I don't know. But my concern is traffic and congestion. Also, even though this is apparently zoned as, or amended to be zoned as non-residential, this is where I live. And this is not something that I want across the street from me. I lived through the last 2 renovations, and yes, they do a good job. I hope that tree you're going to try to move lives when you try to move it. But my real concern is the traffic, the lack of visibility at the intersections, because the employees park too close to the intersections and you can't get around. And it just makes a bad situation worse. And I didn't get an invite to the meeting, the original meeting. I did get one from the town council. So I don't know if I was considered an eligible person or not. But thanks to the town council for sending me this. And then I would like to know what the other neighbors said, the ones beside and behind and across the street, and what criteria were used to conclude that this change will have no deleterious effect in the character of the surrounding neighborhood, because I believe it does. And then this sounds like it's something that where the building is going to be bigger than the land on which it sits on. And I would ask the council, in considering this, is this something that you would want in your own neighborhood, on your own street, and in front of your house? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Fletcher. That's the end of the sign-up sheet for this public hearing. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to it? Okay. With that, I want to read in the record, letter dated May 14, 2019 from TPZ recommending approval, letter dated May 6, 2019 from DRAC recommending approval, and letter dated May 22, 2019 from CROG finding no apparent conflict. Would the applicant like to come come up and respond to any of the, and also if there's anybody at the table that has questions. And then we will close the public hearing and go to the Democracy Cup, and I see you out there. I apologize.
I will just say briefly, objections noted. The applicant would like to make a continued investment in the community. They would like to develop the property in a responsible way. I'm gratified by the neighbors' acknowledgement that the first development they did, the first renovation, was done successfully. I have in my notes that you should have gotten a letter inviting you to that meeting. Why you didn't, whether it was sent or not, I have no idea. I do have that as a note. I don't note that you were sent a letter from this, and why they didn't send it to you, I don't know. Whether they were just considering West Hartford addresses or not Hartford, I have no idea. But my notes indicate that you should have gotten that letter. And it's unfortunate that our clients didn't communicate with you directly about your objections before this evening, but totally understand your objections to what they're proposing. And all I can say in rebuttal is that they did what they said they would do last time. I do believe that their renovations to the structure have been respectful. They have been appropriate given the development and given the changes to Prospect over the years. And they would like to continue to be a good citizen of West Hartford and their proposed development, understanding the concerns raised by the immediate neighbors, and we respect those concerns. And thank you for your consideration. Any questions for us?
Thank you, Attorney Crowe. Any questions for Mr. Williams?
Just like to follow up on an issue raised by Mr. Wygan. Did the applicant attempt to purchase a section of his property some time ago in order to be able to give it some extra space?
I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, I'll take Mr. Wiegand at his word, but I have no knowledge of that.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Stafford?
We know? I don't have a head count, I'm sorry. I believe this space is used for some ability to expand, and you have some, I'm sorry?
New additions, office, and storage.
They're adding office spaces from which I can only surmise it's planned future expansion or the ability to expand and hire. But that's somewhat of a guess based on the plans, but the plans call for new offices as opposed to common areas.
Did I understand that they weren't planning any more employees?
I don't know
Parking-wise.
what they plan in the intermediate future or the immediate future. I think a pretty good guess would be if they're adding offices at some point, they intend to fill the offices, and maybe they would like to hire, but right now they can't hire because they have no place to put present employees. Whether they've made hires or not, I can't speak to directly.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Avidoff, did you have a question?
Asked and answered.
No. All right. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, would you just share with me a little bit about what is happening on Wiegand's property with respect to the encroachment of the two-story addition? What is the closest piece of property to actually the line, the property line?
So on the plan before you here, we have this bold black line here is the closest building on the adjacent property. I can grab my scale out of my bag and scale it off for an actual dimension if you'd like me to do that.
When you say building, what type of building is it?
It's just their main, I think it's a 2.5-story building, I want to say.
It's somebody's home.
I believe it's used as an adult care center.
Adult care center?
Yes.
Is that? Is he able to respond? Sherry?
So that's not really how we do that, but
Okay.
I'm going to actually have I think, there are a number of concerns, I think, questions that some of my colleagues have, and it might be in the best interest to continue the public hearing rather than having, and I am a little concerned too, we did not ask you before we had the public hearing. There was one counselor that had a late cancellation and did not make it here. And that we typically ask beforehand. And I thought that I don't know if you were specifically asked. So that also is, even though we could have somebody else watch the public hearing beforehand, I don't know if that's, and step in and be a part at the table also. So that's where we're leaning, is to continue, but Mr. Allaire.
No, I was just going to point out that if that's the way you're leaning, and if you are going to have Mr. Dodge read the transcript or watch the video, the shorter you keep it now and the more you keep it open later for questions, the better.
Any questions or concerns? So I think we should continue. Mr. Davidoff?
Madam Mayor, I think we should see if the applicant's comfortable with 8, get a response for the record if they're capable with 8 to decide. And the second thing would be whether or not they would be comfortable with us continuing this hearing so we can get some of the answers to the questions that have been asked instead of just having them be suppositions.
Mr. Williams?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just like that, I have no reason to doubt Mr. Wiegand's credibility, but I do think that the whole issue about prior attempts to purchase property from him that would avoid this whole situation is material to the disposition of this application. I would just ask that it be addressed in the continued hearing. Thank you.
I agree. I think that's appropriate. And so I think if everyone is in agreement, then we'll close continue the public hearing. And we will find out, actually, I would like to know from you now, on the record, are you comfortable with 8 or do you want 9 people at the table? That's.
Would be. Mayor Cantor, if we continue the public hearing, the theory would be that you'd have a full council.
We
to
would request,
decide.
it wouldn't be guaranteed, we would request that a counselor that is not here, that had a late cancellation, read the transcript and be up to speed and be able to sit at the table with all of us, depending on, obviously, schedules. So that would be the expectation. Yes.
Okay, and is there additional information you require from us when you continue the hearing?
Well, I think that Mr. Williams' point on the purchase of the property, do you want to spell it out? Thank you.
Sure, Counselor. Mr. Wiegand, who I have no reason to doubt his credibility at all, talked about how there were prior attempts by the applicant to purchase property that would avoid this entire issue. I think that's material here. I think that's worthy of consideration by the council, and I just want to know the applicant's position on that and more information about that, because we don't have any documents or anything of that nature. So, thank you.
And maybe some outreach on why people didn't get letters, because that is a concern of ours, because that's a procedure that we follow very closely in outreach. And Mr. Davidoff had a couple.
I think Mr. Stafford raised the issue as to how many employees are currently employed at the firm in the capacity of attorneys and administrative staff. What is the purpose of the new added space? There was testimony as to whether or not that was going to be for future hires. Is that the case? Where do current employees currently park if there's adequate parking on site? Why are they even parking on the street to address the neighbor across the street's concern? I think those all need to be part of the record so that we can make a more informed
Understood.
decision. Okay, thank you, sir.
Mr. Winograd, did you have? No. And I also don't know, and I would have asked this, but because we're continuing, I don't think I would do that, is any screening that would be we did hear about some screening on the back near the trash pad, but did not on the abutting property and how that would be screened. So I think there's just some incomplete information.
Agreed.
And we would like to decide on with complete.
No, we agree. We think you should have complete information before you decide, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the public hearing is continued, and we thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, and we will start, if you don't mind. And Mr. Stafford, you are free to sit there and join us, or you can leave, whatever you want to do. Okay. I'm sorry. So, Ms.
There's two
Lebrow.
potential dates, June 11th at 7 PM or June 25th at 7 PM.
So, I would prefer to do the June 11th at 7 PM if that's possible. Okay, so we will continue the public hearing. Did you hear, I'm the applicant, did you hear, to June 11th at 7 PM? And if you have an issue, we can call town staff. Yes, we will say that as part of the record, yeah. Okay, and with that, that is continued, and we will call the town council meeting to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Ms. Lebrow?
Mr. Barnes.
Present.
Ms. Cantor.
Here.
Mr. Davidoff.
Here.
Mr. Dodge is absent. Ms. Fay.
Here.
Ms. Kerrigan. Mr. Sweeney's absent. Mr. Winograd. And Mr. Williams.
Here.
I think we are starting with a very distinguished guest. I think we have the Secretary of State, Denise Merrill, with us, and I think she's going to present us with something. So maybe we can come on up. Essie, do you want to go to meet? Oh, I think you should.
And call up the register.
Yeah, well, why don't you, I think you should do that. Can you do?
Good evening, and thank you for having me here tonight. And as they say, now for something entirely different. I am here tonight to recognize the city of West Hartford for their receiving the Democracy Cup presentation this year for having the most people turn out to vote in the 2018 election in the category of city, which is why I particularly say the word city. West Hartford is known to be a very active community, politically and civically. There's a great deal of civic engagement, and you're known for it. I say that not only from personal knowledge, but also by the fact that West Hartford previously won the Democracy Cup in 2000, 2002, 2003, 2005, and 2007. So this is not a new experience for West Hartford. However, I have to admit that we did change the category previously last time because we created 4 divisions feeling it was more fair, and you still won the cup in the new division. So congratulations to everyone involved with elections, and as we know, there are a great number of people that get involved with making a successful election occur every year. So I particularly would like to recognize your clerk, Essie Lebrot, the registrars, Patrice Peterson and Beth Kyle, and everyone else who worked on the elections in West Hartford, the many election officials, the poll workers, the volunteers, and everyone that makes this happen. Now, I know everyone's looking at this cup in amazement.
I'm not standing there because it's bigger than me. It's huge.
I like to point out that this was not purchased with taxpayer dollars. There was a gentleman in East Haddam who really started this idea of a democracy cup. He was just an interested citizen, and he purchased these cups. There are 4 of them. This is quite obviously the largest of them. And I hope you have a really good place to put it. And yes, really, congratulations. It is an honor. There are 169 towns in Connecticut, and it is quite something to win a Democracy Cup this many times. I suppose I should mention that the turnout in West Hartford for the 2018 election was 74.94%. Just about 75% of those registered actually voted. Not only that, it was a record number of registrations, as I'm sure the registrars can attest. In fact, in the state of Connecticut this year, we had over 300,000 new voters register between 2016 and 2018. An absolutely enormous record for registrations of voters in the state. And there's probably a lot of reasons for that. I like to think one of them is because we have made efforts in Connecticut to make it easier to register to vote. You can now register online on our online system if you have a driver's license in Connecticut. It takes about a minute, and it's been wonderful. Not only that, our turnout was also record in Connecticut, and of the 300,000 new voters, what really is most exciting to me, honestly, is that 92,000 of them were between the ages of 18 and 24. And that is a real record. So congratulations to all of you. Thank you so much for participating in our wonderful democracy in our wonderful state. We are recognized as having one of the best election systems in the country. When the Pew Foundation did its last survey of election processes, we were ranked number 5 in the country. And so I'm proud of that. You should all be too. And thank you to the citizens for caring enough to show up and cast your vote. So thank you very much for having me here tonight, and I'd love to take a nice picture of all of you, and I hope you have a place to put that.
Thank you, Secretary of State, and we want to thank you for your work in making obviously the registering to vote a much easier process, and for promoting the importance of voting and educating our residents on that. We are really, really proud of our citizens. And our registrar, our town clerk and our registrars. This is truly a team effort, and they work so hard during election time. So I want to give them a big round of applause.
Thanks to you.
And we will take a picture. I think we should all get up and stand around the Democracy Cup with the Secretary of State and our registrar. That is a big cup. Isn't it?
On both sides of it, and back. Yeah, it's going to take on this. Why don't we do something back sometime?
Us short ladies.
They can do it with ice skates.
Thank you so much. Great job. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
I should tell you all, I do know Matt Hart from my
June 11th.
What's that?
To June 11th.
We're going to ask you to spell at some point.
He was a young whippersnapper.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go back to the Capitol where things are much less interesting.
Good luck, good luck. All right. Thank you so much again for being here and for all you do. Okay. Thank you.
See you later.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules to deliver 2 proclamations. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. I think I have some people in the audience on this proclamation, so I will meet. This is, oh my, this is the other one. Sorry. Thank you. All right. Start with Sarah. Okay. Sarah, want to come up with whoever wants to come up? Okay, so I will read this, and if you want to say a few words, that's okay. Whereas nearly 40,000 people were killed by guns in the United States last year, one of the highest numbers in more than 2 decades. Whereas guns make hate crimes deadly, as witnessed repeatedly in houses of worship all across our nation. Whereas abused women are five times more likely to be killed if the abuser owns a firearm, and more than 80% of a child firearm suicides use a gun belonging to a family member. And whereas gun violence costs the U.S. economy at least $229 billion every year, and whereas 1 in 5 firearm purchases occurs without a criminal background check, even though 97% of Americans support background checks for all sales, and whereas beyond the loss of life and the pain and suffering of survivors, there are countless thousands of family members and friends whose lives are forever scarred. And whereas to honor all victims of gun violence, June 2nd is designated as National Gun Violence Awareness Day. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that on behalf of the Town Council and the residents of West Hartford, I, Mayor Sherry G. Cantor, do hereby recognize June 2nd, 2019 as Gun Violence Awareness Day in the town of West Hartford and encourage all to wear orange in honor of the lives lost to gun violence and families and friends of those victims. Thank you for CAGV, Connecticut Against Gun Violence, and all the work that people do to raise awareness and understanding on all that has happened. And today, I think I saw on the news 21,400 and I can't remember, it's 38, I think, lives have been lost to gun violence in 2019. So.
Thank you, Mayor Cantor. I won't take long. I just want to say thank you very much to the Town Council, to Mayor Cantor for recognizing this important issue that is literally a life or death issue that affects people in our town, affects people in neighboring towns, of course, every single day. And I just wanted to make the point that not only is it the horrible loss of life and terrible events like the songs went through, you know, for people who know about Ethan's Law that just passed, where they lost their child to senseless gun violence. But there are also record numbers of children who have been present when other people have been murdered, and they're living with that trauma. And so the effects of gun violence go on and on and on throughout our community. And so I'm just so grateful to live in a town like West Hartford that's willing to recognize June 2nd and the importance of being aware of gun violence.
Thank you. Would you all like to just introduce yourselves briefly? Come on.
My name is Katie McCarthy.
Taller than me.
Thank you for having us. My name is Kate Martin. I did just want to make everyone here aware that we do have an opportunity for everyone to join your voice with ours here in West Hartford. On June 8th, we will be walking 6 miles from Town Hall to the state capitol in Hartford, and we are collecting everyone from the greater Hartford area to walk with us. And we will be stopping at places where we have seen episodes of gun violence occur. So we're stopping at a synagogue, a mosque, a school, a movie theater, and we are collecting our voices with those in Hartford to elevate the awareness for this issue. And we would welcome anyone to come. We'll be starting at 9:30 a.m. on Saturday, June 8th. So thank you.
And just say the organization you're a part of.
So, and I'm with Moms Demand Action.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just
I'm Nicole Ozier, and I'm a resident of West Hartford, and I am with Moms Demand Action as well.
Hi, good evening. Thanks so much for having us. My name is Jo Schubert. I'm a social worker, and I work with violence and injury prevention programs at St. Francis Hospital. They're a level 1 trauma center that sees a lot of the real and physical impact of the gun violence that happens in our community. So I'm grateful to live in West Hartford because just the recognition that this is happening in our backyard and that it's something that we can all be responsible for and all help to create a solution towards makes me proud. So thank you.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate all here. Okay, and this is you do. Oh, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Patrick LaRocco, and I'd just like to say that I have heard about gun violence causing trauma and many things that no family should have to suffer. So I'm supporting the cause to stop that, and thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you so much. That was very moving. I appreciate it very much. Thank you all. Have a good night. Second proclamation, a little related, I'd say, but not I mean, it's health. Whereas despite advances in medical technology and research, men continue to live an average of 5 years less than women, with Native American and African American men having the lowest life expectancy. And whereas educating the public and health care providers about the importance of a healthy lifestyle and early detection of male health problems will result in reducing rates of mortality from disease. And whereas men who are educated about the value of preventative health can play in prolonging their lifespan and their role as productive family members will be more likely to participate in health screenings, and whereas fathers who maintain a healthy lifestyle are role models for their children and have happier, healthy children, and whereas Men's Health Network worked with Congress to develop a national men's health awareness period as a special campaign to help educate men, boys, and their families with the importance of positive health attitudes and preventative health practices, and whereas Men's Health Month will focus on a broad range of men's health issues, including heart disease, mental health, diabetes, prostate, testicular, and colon cancer. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that on behalf of the Town Council of West Hartford and the residents of West Hartford, I, Mayor Sherry G. Cantor, do hereby proclaim June as Men's Health Month in the town of West Hartford and encourage all citizens to increase awareness of the importance of a healthy lifestyle, regular exercise, medical checkup, and to participate in preventative health practices and early detection efforts. And this is a national movement that we are part of in men's health. So thank you all, and this will actually go to that organization. So thank you. Okay. With that, we will go to item number 2.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move approval of the minutes of the Town Council 5/14/2019.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. We have several people signed up. You can speak to something on the agenda, and you all have actually outlined something. So the first person, and you have 3 minutes to speak unless you are representing an organization, then you have 5 minutes. The first person that signed up to speak is Roberta Swanson Bowers. So mention your name, your address, and the item you're speaking to. It is voice activated, so when you come up, you can just speak into the mic. So I'm assuming we have James Bowers too?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Thank you,
Yes.
Mayor Cantor, distinguished members of the Town Council. We are here.
Just state your name and address for the record, thank you.
Of course. My name is James Bowers, and this is my wife.
Rebecca Swanson Bowers.
Right. And we reside at 5 Old Oak Road. 5 Old Oak Road, our property is somewhat of a historic property. It's a house that was built in 1810. In point of fact, it didn't start out as a house, it started out as a creamery. That area of town was called Whiting Corner, if you're from this area. And the house that we live in now was formerly the creamery of Whiting Corner. The property has a lot of historic value and sentimental value to us. In point of fact, we've lived there for the last 40 years. We've had many opportunities to leave, move elsewhere, but have stayed because we like the corner. But from the very beginning, we've been impacted by the intersection on which the house sits. We are on the I guess would be the southwest corner of Mountain Road, and I'm sure you've driven by that property many times. We are here tonight to speak our concerns about the project to improve the traffic flow. We don't deny that the project does do that, but we are probably the most impacted resident on the stretch. The house, because it's an old structure, sits near Mountain Road. In fact, we're about 13 feet from Mountain Road. When we bought the property, the traffic volume obviously wasn't as high as it is today, such as progress. But today, with an expansion of the road as proposed, we are going to be impacted more than we have ever been before. Impacted in three ways. Number one, safety. Number two, aesthetics. And number three, we feel that our property use will be diminished by what is being proposed. And what is being proposed, I don't want to misstate what is being proposed, but basically what is being proposed is that in order to accommodate two proposed bike pathways along Mountain Road, a part of our property is going to be taken for, that accommodation. And, we understand that the planners have looked at this 6 ways to Sunday. We've had multiple conversations with Greg Summer and Dwayne Martin. They've been very, very considerate, but the bottom line is that it seems to us that the interests of the bikers is prevailing over the interests of us as long-standing property owners of a historic property that is 18 feet from Mountain Road. So any encroachment will bring traffic closer to where our property line is. Now, a lot has been said that, the bike lane will provide a buffer, but we all know that cars encroach on biking lane. We've had issues with respect to cars parking out in front of our property, over the curb, etc., and we've tried to plant some flowers there to discourage such abuse, but it's a constant, tug of war. We just wanted to go on record tonight, and I'll let my wife speak next. We just want to go on record tonight that while we understand that, progress is inevitable, we understand that, the flow of traffic backs up at that corner. We understand all of those dimensions, but we also want to be heard that as the owner of a historic property that sits only 13 feet from the road, any encroachment, whether it's a foot or so, brings the world closer to our doorstep, which we have to contend with the noise, as well as the diminished aesthetics in terms of our use of that property. So let me turn it over to my wife, who will make a few points in addition.
Okay. One thing that impacted us right away.
Okay, Rebecca, just
I'm
state your
sorry.
name for the record.
I'm sorry, it's Rebecca Swanson Bowers. It's hyphenated. One thing that really stands out in my mind is that several years ago, there was a dump truck that just went crashing over right next to our house. Our younger son at the time was right downstairs, right by the window. And fortunately, the truck went that way, not our way. But it was very scary for our son, who had this dump truck crashed right next to him. The windows were closed, the curtains were closed, and all of a sudden this huge crash. I was not in the house at the time and came back and found all that these traffic, and I couldn't even get back to the house, and it was a very scary time. And if they're going to take still more feet away from distance away from the property, I don't want that dump truck to be coming into the house exactly this time. That's one thing. One of the things that we've noticed also is Jim already talked about the aesthetics area, because we put flowers there every year so that we can keep trash out of our yards. In the winter, we get much more trash, and we always have to go outside to get out this trash. And when the cars go by, they're going fast. And it's very difficult for us to safely go out there and pick up the trash. So we always put flowers out there, which everybody then call out to us from the street and say, "Oh, we like the flowers." But it's easy to do because we're trying to water with the cars right next to us, and with the and all the noise, and it's really unnerving. So we have to deal with that also. And plus the aesthetic thing, being it so close to the house, it's the combination of safety and aesthetics right there. Just a couple of things that I would notice. You'll probably catch another things that I'm missing. But one thing that I've noticed is that there are at least 4 streets here in the town of West Hartford where there are indications on the road for little bicycles, pictures for bicycles. Those pictures are not on Mountain Road right by our house. It is near Still Road, Flag Road, Boulevard Road, and also on South Main Street. South Main Street is a very busy street, just like Mountain. But there's no extra space on the extra side of the road for being required for bicycles. On South Main, they're not taking the sidewalk away there and putting bicycle spaces there, but they're trying to take extra spaces on Mountain Road, and that's our property, but they're taking that. So I just don't understand when they're talking about in this information that there's what's the wording there for the where's the thing? I can't find it.
Right, I think we just bring the point home. The point Rebecca was making was basically there doesn't seem to be any uniformity in the town around when bikers share space with cars and not. And she pointed out 4 prominent streets where the bikers and the cars share the space. So, with respect to the project that's being proposed, they want 4 feet on each side of Mountain Road to accommodate the bikers. And our thought was, well, since we are a long-standing property owner with a historic property, that should be given some weight with the bikers. Perhaps the bikers need to share some space to make it work out fine. So this is just a matter of inconsistency in the town with respect to shared space versus dedicated bike lanes.
Right, it's also, I was talking about the complete streets policy, and it seems to me if you have a whole policy and these streets are doing with these indications on the road, but there's a totally different deviation on Mountain Road, why is there a difference? I don't understand that.
So we do have a limited time, and the bell did go
Sorry.
off a while ago, but if you could just wrap, I think, we.
Okay. Well, I think you get the
Yeah, you
point.
get the idea.
And to just summarize, we are longstanding property owners, have no intention of moving. We like the property, but this project does impact, and I don't know what the solution is to preserve our rights, but yet honor the rights of the bikers as well. But I guess that's your job at the end of the day to sort it all out.
There's just one more historic thing, and that is the septic system. We're in a septic system there, as that whole area is. Nobody knows where our septic system is. The house is so old. And when the health department looked for it, they couldn't find it. When I called the septic people, and they don't know where it is. It could be right next, it could be partly right on Mountain Road, it could be right next to Mountain Road, nobody's really quite sure in that, so.
What she means is that the leaching field, we know where the septic
Right.
system is, but we're not quite sure whether it leaches under the road or not. So, yeah.
Thank
So
you
that
very
could be an
much.
issue.
And at this point, we receive comment, and then when it comes up on our agenda, we will discuss it we'll have a presentation by staff, and we will be discussing. Thank you so much. The next person that signed up is Daniel Johnson. State your name and address for the record.
Sure. Daniel Johnson, 521 Quaker Lane South, also a board member on the West Hartford Pedestrian and Bicycle Commission. I want to thank Mrs. Swanson Bowers and Mr. Bowers for their comments. Representing the West Hartford Pedestrian and Bicycle Commission, I would say I'm a pedestrian first and a road cyclist much farther down the list. So my concerns really do lie with the pedestrian community in West Hartford. On March 18th, we did write a letter to the town addressing our concerns with the road design improvements for the increased traffic flow and most importantly, the removal of sidewalks. The exception to the complete streets policy brought before town council, the Pedestrian and Bicycle Commission is not in favor of this exception. The commission remains concerned with the proposal, elimination of an existing sidewalk, and the precedent it sets for the town going forward. The additions promise to increase traffic flow and increase risk to pedestrians. The additions promised to increase traffic flow, increase risk to pedestrians and cyclists, and give rights to motorists to use that roadway more frequently. The road is a residential road, not a throughway, and we request changes that follow the complete streets policy wholly and in its entirety. I have no further comments on this. If you guys have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We receive comment here, and then we will discuss with staff, and
Sure.
we ask questions to staff. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
That is the end of our sign-up sheet. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to anything on this agenda that's not the subject of a public hearing? Okay, with that, we are on to 4A consent calendar.
I move we place items 6B to 6C and 11A to E on consent.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. 5A.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move we adopt a resolution authorizing submission of the Neighborhood Assistant Grant application.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions on this? All right, this was the subject of a brief public hearing. With that, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. 5B is...
Thank
Yep, go
you,
ahead.
Madam Mayor. I move we table to June 11th at 7 PM an application filed on behalf of 527 Prospect LLC, owner of 527 Prospect Ave, to amendment SDD number 123 to permit an approximately 984 square foot two-story addition for expanded office space. Associated landscape and parking and drainage improvements are proposed.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. 6B. Oh, no, 6D. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Where are we?
A. 6A.
6A. I apologize.
That's okay.
My glasses did weird stuff.
Thank you,
Yes.
Madam Mayor. I move adoption of a resolution.
Hold 1 second, Ms. Kerrigan. Mr. Barnes had a question?
I'm sorry, out of turn, I apologize, but the items that we put on the consent calendar, could I just have them read back to me? Just so I know.
6B.
6B, C, and all under 11.
C, B, C, and 11. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move adoption of a resolution approving a West Hartford Complete Streets policy exception for the Mountain Road at Albany Ave intersection improvement project.
Second.
So I'm with Mr. Hart. We have I'm sure, a presentation from town staff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I would invite our town engineer, Dwayne Martin, to come forward. As our cover letter states, town staff is recommending that the council approve an exception to our complete streets policy that you adopted some years back in connection with the Mountain Road Albany Avenue intersection project. We did review this item with the Community Planning and Physical Services Committee at its last meeting. So Mr. Martin will make a brief presentation, then we'll be happy to address the issues that were raised during public comment tonight as well. And we also have Greg Summer from the Engineering Division to assist as well.
Touchy. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dwayne Martin. I'm the West Hartford Town Engineer. With me to my left is Greg Summer. I asked Greg to attend tonight as he is the designer for the project, working for the Engineering Division. A little bit of background on this project. So we received a grant to do an intersection improvement, as you can see on the display before you, at the intersection of Albany Ave and Mountain Road. Mountain Road runs left and right on the screen there. So the intersection is a state intersection. Traffic signal is owned and maintained and operated by the state. Albany Ave, Route 44 being the state highway, Mountain Road being the town road. But as you can see on the screen, the vast majority of the improvements are planned on Mountain Road. The reason that we were able to receive the grant was based on a lot of different characteristics and rankings that were viewed favorably because of the need at the intersection, predominantly the traffic backups, the congestion, and some of the safety issues that occur there. So the primary focus of the grant was to do an intersection improvement to get traffic to flow more freely and safely to avoid some of the safety issues that occur there. Secondary to that was the town's complete streets approach to all projects. And what ended up happening was, after we applied for the grant for a certain concept, which was focused more so in the northbound direction than in both directions, in other words, to widen the northbound approach, the DOT reviewed our application and found that it was not far-reaching enough to address the future traffic volumes that the intersection would receive. So there was a slight benefit to our original concept plan to address the issues that were occurring at the intersection, but not enough. So we had to go back and do additional work to the intersection, revise the concept plan, and then move forward. So taking a step back, originally we were proposing to widen the intersection, and our original plan was to keep the sidewalk on Mountain Road, south of Albany Ave, which is on the east side of Mountain Road, and then to add a new section of sidewalk for an area that there is no sidewalk, which is north of Albany Ave on the east side. So we would have a continuous sidewalk through the intersection. Currently on Mountain Road, there are bike lanes, And so the idea at the time was to keep the bike lanes there. So it was kind of the best of all worlds. We were widening to provide more capacity, we were maintaining the bike lanes, and we were eliminating a sidewalk gap, more sidewalk connectivity for the neighborhood, which was great. But when we found out that we had to do additional widening at the intersection, that's where things started to go a little sideways. As Greg continued through the outreach process and we reached out to the condo associations on the corners, some of the other stakeholders like the Bowers that just spoke, we realized that this was not going to be an easy process because we were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, trying to balance all the interests for the vulnerable users and our complete streets policy. Getting back, we realized that we had to widen the intersection. That was the basis of the project. The DOT ended up reviewing an earlier version of this with the additional lanes and viewed it favorably. So they essentially gave us the green light to move forward with our concept plan. And as I mentioned, we went through the outreach process. There were differences of opinion whether there should be bike lanes, a sidewalk, and so on and so forth. It was further complicated by factors at the intersection, or near the intersection. As the Bowers mentioned, they have a lovely home, but it is very close to Mountain Road now. We also have a very large retaining wall on the northwest quadrant of the intersection that would be impacted. We've met with that property owner, and she expressed similar concerns, impacts to her property. The Governor's Row Condo Association members did not want the proposed sidewalk at all. They said they would fight our project if the sidewalk was proposed there, which came as a little bit of a surprise to us, but they had concerns about snow maintenance, privacy impacts to their privacy and property values. And the Mountain Commons were not happy to learn that there was still an easement on the land records, which allows us to widen the road. They were in favor of keeping the sidewalk, but had some reservations about the bike lanes. So there was a lot of interest that we were trying to balance through this process. Greg reminded me it was well over a year since we started from that original concept plan to where we are now. And so what we've come up with is changing the lane arrangements, as you can see. So we are extending the left turn lanes that exist there now. And then we have two through lanes approaching the intersection on Mountain Road. So what's proposed is an exclusive left turn lane, a through lane, and then a shared through and right turn lane. That was what the DOT approved and allowed us to move forward on. Then it was a matter of how do we fit, whether it's a sidewalk or bike lanes. So what ended up coming out was the sidewalk, which currently exists south of Mountain Road. So that ended up being eliminated, which was not an easy decision to eliminate a facility that's been there. Greg actually went out on a Saturday, and we've also talked to the abutters, as I mentioned, and the sidewalk is really underutilized. Now, you can make the argument, well, it's underutilized because there isn't a sidewalk north of the intersection. But because of some of the issues that we encountered during the outreach process and the takes that it would require and the impacts of the properties, we're not sure that there will ever be a sidewalk built there. And there are a good amount of bicyclists that ride on Mountain Road. And some people argued that they shouldn't be there, they shouldn't be in the street, it's unsafe, but there are some hardcore cyclists out there that do not have a problem riding on Mountain Road. And so we had concerns about eliminating that and favoring a sidewalk that may never extend across the intersection. So it was a difficult decision, and towards the tail end of it, we realized that in order to get the bike lanes continuously down Mountain Road through the intersection, it would require us to widen Mountain Road. And we try to balance, you can see on this plan, the yellow, I believe, is the widening areas. Correct. So you can see we didn't focus on one side or the other. We tried to balance it out as best we could, given the retaining wall, the utilities, and unfortunately the Bowers house being fairly close to Mountain Road. So this is what we're proposing. There's a resolution for an exception to the complete streets policy. The reason for the exception, as it's stated in the resolution, is that the sidewalk is viewed as being underutilized. And there are also the bike lanes. It's desirable to have them 5 feet wide, and we're proposing 4 feet wide. So it's slightly less than what we would typically strive for bike lanes. To go through some of the things that were discussed and just comment on those, just for clarification, and again, I'm not trying to diminish the point. Your house is very close to the street. We've met with them a few times to go over their concerns. But Greg mentioned to me that based on our survey, the house is 25 feet. So from the closest point of the house to the current curb line, it's 25 feet. We're proposing to widen the road or narrow that by 2 feet. So the curb line would be shifted by 2 feet closer to their house. So again, it's not ideal, it's not where we started, but we're trying to balance all the interests that we have at the intersection. And we are also not proposing a take. There's enough right-of-way in there that that additional widening would not require a take in front of the Bowers house. So I just wanted to clarify that. We've met with him, as I said, to talk about some of the safety concerns, and it's difficult when you live at a busy intersection like that to make somebody comfortable with what we're proposing. So there are challenges there. The aesthetics, we did discuss trying to remediate some of the impact from the widening by doing plantings. We even had a landscape architect come up with a concept design that we shared with them. So we're trying to work through some of the concerns that they have. And they did mention vehicles pulling off, which to most people would be strange, but near a busy intersection, I can understand that. And they expressed that there was evidence of rutting on their grass near the plants that they mentioned, which is unfortunate. So we're trying to work our way through that issue, possibly putting some small stones there in addition to the curbing and the plantings that I talked about to discourage people pulling off the street there. With the bike lane, as he mentioned, it is proposed at 4 feet wide. You're not supposed to drive in it, but there's nothing really can do to prevent that other than maybe when there's a cyclist there riding in that bike lane. As far as the town's uniformity for shared and separate bicycle facilities, it really depends on what we have and what we can do. And so for the busier streets, we try to do bike lanes just to create a physical space for cyclists to ride separate from where the motorists drive. And even that's a challenge sometimes. And I mentioned 4 feet is not desirable. In some locations, we have the benefit of pavement. We can actually do buffered bike lanes like we've done on a few roads. But again, it's challenging here to be able to accommodate that. So it really depends on the road as far as whether we have a shared approach or a separated approach. And there is a bicycle facility map which is tied to the Complete Streets policy, which gives them guidance, and that was vetted through the Pedestrian and Bicycle Commission. So the map shows bike lanes on street for Mountain Road in this area. So that was another measure that we took into consideration. And she mentioned the septic system. We can try and find out exactly where that is, but 2 feet of widening, I don't know that that's necessarily going to impact it that much, but we can certainly research that concern. Oh, thank you, Greg. One other thing to point out, which I don't know that you can completely see it on here, but through the process, Greg came up with some ideas as to handle some of the pedestrian neighborhood concerns. So there's a crosswalk that is going to be installed on Mountain Road originally it was proposed near Lovelace, but now it's north of Lovelace at Fairfield. Yeah, just off the sheet there. So it would be a painted crosswalk, and we would consider the rectangular rapid flashing beacons like we have in a few locations in town, just add enhancement because it is obviously a busy street. But the benefit of that is it would connect the Lovelace Avondale neighborhood with Fairfield, which you don't have a crossing there. There's even been some parents that have complained that there isn't a crosswalk there to assist with that maneuver. So that's a proposed improvement. It would also help facilitate crossing of the new development on Mountain Road at 660 to get them across if they wanted to get to the sidewalk that exists on the west side of Mountain Road. And then south of Albany Ave at Mountain Farms, in similar fashion, we're proposing a new crosswalk there with a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. So that would allow that entire neighborhood to cross Mountain Road to get to the sidewalk that exists on Mountain Road on the east side, and they can continue south and walk wherever
Can
they
you
would
just
like.
show that with your...
Yeah, it's just off. And I don't believe it's shown on here because it was such a late consideration in the design that is still evolving. So and I don't want to underestimate the outreach that we have performed. It's everybody that lives near the intersection received a direct mailing. We offered meetings. We even met with the Bowers on a Sunday morning just because it was better for their schedule. It's just unfortunate that there are so many competing interests at the intersection that we had to make a difficult choice, which is what led us here. This is the first time that we've brought a Complete Streets exception to you because the project is funded by state funding. If it's state or federally funded and there's an exception file that comes to you as a body to weigh in on the resolution. There have been 2 others prior, but they were town funded, so they went to the previous town manager for a decision.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Mr. Winograd.
Just a couple things. The green area at the foot of Old Oak. Can you explain what, that's a removal of pavement or?
Yeah, there was a couple opportunities to narrow at the intersection. That was one area. We received some complaints from the abutters, people saying that if you're driving on Albany Ave heading eastbound, you're coming down the mountain, people are traveling at a high rate of speed, and some of those people continue to head south on Mountain Road. So the idea was to narrow that to try and slow that maneuver down a little bit. Greg did turning movement templates to see if it was really necessary for larger vehicles, and we found that that actually was not necessary. And then there's the other one on the northwest corner there, a small widening. It's not a lot, but every little bit helps.
And I'm looking at, there's a Google Mapped picture of Mountain Road. So right now you've got, we have a bike lane there now.
Yes.
And it's currently a 4-foot?
It varies. It varies. And moving
At that spot though, in that.
Oh.
Right there, it looks like there is a lane. It doesn't quite go to the intersection.
Correct.
But sort of in front, I'm looking at the flowers. So at that point, there currently is it looks like they're fairly wide, at least for Mountain Road standards. There already is or is it a wide shoulder?
Oh, I see. Yes, yeah. There's only one travel lane there, but there's a wide shoulder.
Okay.
Designated by the white line.
And that's roughly where the bike lane
Yes.
will be. It's basically the same, similar.
Yes.
Okay. And I see a metal a barrier. Is that it's sort of at the intersection? There's a metal guardrail. Thank you.
At the culvert crossing, I believe is what you're seeing there. There is some guide rail to protect a vehicle from going off the road and down into that water course.
Oh, I see. That's for the water right there.
Yes.
Okay. And that isn't impacted by this? So this is cutting off a couple feet in between the guardrail and the street?
Yeah, there's a grassed area there. On the other side of Mountain Road, that water course continues through a culvert, and we are proposing to extend that culvert because of the widening that occurs on the east side, which he's showing you right there.
Okay.
That's all in the existing easement area, which is also depicted, I guess that's a magenta color.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winograd. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Martin, for your presentation. Also, thank you to Bowers. Great presentation as well. So, Mr. Martin, just so I understand, the CT DOT has to approve this plan, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the issue in terms of the plan being approved by the CT DOT, and I think you said they look favorably on this plan, that's right?
Yes, they reviewed our concept plan.
The concept plan. Okay. So is the issue, just so I understand, the issue with respect to the Bauer property, does the issue of whether or not we have a bike lane going, as envisioned by this plan, have an impact on whether or not the CT DOT will look favorably on this plan as a whole? Do you understand my question?
I do, yes. And the reason I'm hesitating is because they review the application in its entirety.
Right.
But we did mention to them that because of the additional travel lanes, it may require us to eliminate either the sidewalk or the bike lanes. So what happens is we go through the concept and we show them what was proposed, but it's been refined a little bit since they originally saw our finalized concept plan, if you will. In the end of our design, final design, it goes back to the state for a final review and approval.
Okay. So is it fair to say then that, in your opinion, the issue of whether or not we have these bike paths on Mountain Road is probably not going to be dispositive on the CTDOT approval? It's more of an issue with our streets plans moving forward?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Barnes?
Yeah. Thank you. Dwayne, And Greg, thanks for the presentation and the information. You know, we've been talking about this for a long time. It's been before the committee. I recall the, initial plans. These are certainly more, elaborate. It's kind of evolved over time as you've described. And sitting here tonight, I wasn't aware of the, the resident concern, the Bowers concern on the corner there. But just looking at this diagram, the yellow lines, can you just approximately tell me how much we're widening the road on at least the three sides here?
I'll ask Greg to answer that one.
Sure. Greg Summer, civil engineer with the town of West Hartford, for the record. Basically, right here at the corner between Old Oak and Mountain Road, it's almost a full 4 feet, but then where we were referring to before, directly in front of the Bowers property, it's closer to 2 feet that we're widening. The magenta line represents the right-of-way, so you can see, as Dwayne mentioned, we're all within the existing road right-of-way at that point. On the east side, just kind of scaling it off, we have 10-foot travel lanes, a 4-foot bike lane, so I would estimate that's probably 13 to 14 feet, and it would probably vary on the southeast side of the intersection. As we look on the northeast side, that's probably closer to maybe 8-9 feet, I would guess. We could scale those off and get those exact dimensions.
Okay. And so, I mean, it's clear, obviously, you have challenges with Mountain Commons and, the one to the north is?
Governor's Row.
Governor's Row. And, at least one, maybe two or more resident concerns as well. And I'm familiar with the intersection because I drive it every day, and I get stuck in the queue and have to come up traveling north. One other comment or thought with respect to the crosswalks you described at the north and the south side, it seems like they're going to be positioned almost just before the driver makes a decision about how to queue into this intersection with a blinking light. And I'm concerned about, the safety of having, people in the crosswalk and drivers not, paying attention and realizing that when they come to a crosswalk, it's not New York City or somewhere else. A lot of times, and we see it at crosswalks around town, drivers aren't really aware of their responsibility to stop there. I know that's the law and they need to, but to have it at really two busy locations coming into an extremely busy intersection, is it a good trade-off to put in crosswalks so the neighbors to the east and to the west can, walk back and forth? Can you just speak to the reason why we're having the crosswalks, whether if somebody requested them or why they're part of this plan?
Well, as I said, it was identified through the outreach process that there may be alternatives that we could add to our project to accommodate some of the pedestrian connections that are lacking right now. With the proposed improvements to the intersection and the queue reduction and the traffic flowing more freely, the visibility of the crosswalk locations rather should be much improved compared to what you have now. But granted, they're new crosswalks, so there will be a little bit of a learning curve there, if you will, which is why we feel as though the rectangular rapid flashing beacons is an appropriate addition to just having the crosswalks and the regular signage. And the way that works is a pedestrian walks up, pushes a button, and that activates the lights. So it's an enhancement which we're hoping will grab the attention of the motorist to recognize that somebody's intending or actively crossing at that location.
Mm-hmm. And
Right. Yep.
And as part of that, have you given thought to the impact that it's going to have on traffic flow in the morning and in the evening? Because depending on the time of day, if you're heading north in the morning or south in the evening, cars back up 3-4 light queues to get through there. And if you throw in a crosswalk with the blinking light, when people are going to be crossing, it could take, a lot longer to get through that intersection.
Yes, it could. It's certainly possible depending on the traffic situation. But the intersection improvements that we're proposing are going to drastically shrink the traffic queues. I mean, you're adding a lane in each direction, so you can imagine that it's much less than what we have out there presently.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it will require motorists to stop to allow a pedestrian to cross. I can't tell you off the top of my head how many times the buttons will be pushed and how interested pedestrians will be to cross during a peak hour or any time of day, but there is a good number of residents that live in those neighborhoods, and a few have expressed interest in crossing Mountain Road. But with the flashing devices and the typical signage and pavement markings, it'll be safer than what you have at just a standard crosswalk, and which is something that we're looking at, an enhancement, if you will, to the pedestrian controls for busier roadways.
Okay. Like I said, I, appreciate and, respect the effort to try and accommodate all these various stakeholders with this project and to actually accomplish the goals that we want to accomplish with respect to traffic flow. But, for my part, I think, the crosswalks strike me as not a good idea. And generally, I'm not in favor of giving up, resident real property. And I understand that there's an easement and it's not officially a taking, but to make that trade-off, to use that land to, have 5-foot or 4-foot bike lanes on both sides of this is a trade-off that, that I won't support. But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Ms. Kerrigan.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, both of you. I appreciate it. So with respect to the Bowers property, if I was sitting in their house right now, from the wall to the cars driving, probably 60 miles an hour, it's 25 feet?
Yes.
Is that safe to say? Okay. So I give you both a lot of credit. I appreciate you beautifying a historic house. I don't know how comfortable I would feel sitting 25 feet from Mountain Road, and then to lose 2 feet. Ouch. That being said, can you talk to the history of that house with respect to the right-of-way? Where did it start and where it is now?
I can't speak to the history of it, but it's shown on there. I can zoom in again. Oops, that was not what I wanted to do. Let's try that again. There we go. So the image doesn't necessarily correlate because of the angle of the photograph to the true location of the house. So Greg, from the survey, has put the black outline of the edge of their house closest to Mountain Road. And the magenta line there is the current public street right away. And again, I'm not trying to diminish and say it's 25 feet and that's acceptable. And yes, we are proposing to widen, which will get it 2 feet closer. We've met with them. We've talked about their concerns. I'm not arguing that fact at all. We're just trying to balance the interests that we have as part of our project.
I can see the visual of their house, and I can see Mountain Road. What is that black line?
The black line running along the road there?
No, the one that's on top of their house. Is that supposed to represent? That's supposed to be the wall?
That's the edge of the foundation.
That's the edge of the foundation. So the rest is like overhang from a roof or something?
Well,
Just distortion due to
it's the angle of photo. So the line work that's shown on the plan, all the different colored lines, that's based on our survey.
Mm-hmm.
Photo wasn't taken directly above,
Mhm.
so you kind of get a little bit of a distortion.
Okay.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Mr. Martin, I know what juggling all these interests was probably like for you. So thanks for doing that. As I'm looking at the plans, it looks like from analyzing everything here that the Governor's Row folks didn't want a sidewalk and there's going to be no sidewalk. Is that right?
There was a sidewalk proposed along
Right.
their frontage.
But
That's
there's-
correct.
Okay, and then we have the Mountain Commons folks are happy that the sidewalk's being removed.
That may
Or it's
depend
just-
on who you ask there.
Okay.
I think the biggest complaint from the Mountain Commons Association members was the road getting closer to their units. They did not like that, for obvious reasons.
Okay. And then the bikers, here's my point, is that we have the Bowers who really gave I think a compelling discussion, and they are lone property owners who have invested in the community for 4 decades. And they were up against groups and it's really hard to prioritize, and that's our body, this job in many respects. But I think that given their longstanding commitment to town, and then the fact that property rights are very significant in our society, I think we should really tread lightly on removing the 2 feet, particularly with some of the concerns they've expressed. And look, we have a lot of bike lanes in town. I know there's a movement towards complete streets. We have complete streets. There's a movement towards advancing that. But I think balancing all these rights, the Bowers really gave a persuasive presentation about why in this particular situation we should try to avoid a taking, even though I understand it's within an easement and it's legally not a taking, but physically it's a taking. It's probably also a taking of their property value overall. But I think that this body should consider that. And likewise, the fact that the bike lanes are not likely to, if they were removed from Mountain Road from this plan, throw the entire concept out with CTDOT, I think is significant, because we obviously need this intersection needs a lot of work. So that's where I stand. I'm not going to support it as proposed for those reasons, and I would hope that my colleagues would join. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Anybody, Mr. Williams? No? Did you have something?
Are we still in questions, or?
We're in questions.
Or are we in taking up the topic yet? I'm not trying to, because we're not in the public hearing. Are we still in public hearing, or are we? I'm sorry, I got confused on that. We are, sorry. I know, I'm just trying to
I know it's been a long night.
We always jump to, we start with questions and then they become.
No, this is the presentation of the staff to us. This was.
We don't have a motion yet. That's what I'm saying. We're still in the questioning stage. You don't have a motion yet on the merits.
Well,
So do
there
we?
was
That's
a,
what I'm-
no,
that's what I'm
the
trying to
item
like-
was brought up, it's seconded, and now we're in the discussion of the item.
We are, okay. Thank you. I'll start with just one thing I'd like to have clarified on. You'd mentioned the issue about the sidewalk versus the bike lane, which really was, that's the issue that brings us here, with the exception to the complete streets. Am I correct on that?
There's
in terms
two
of-
items as part of the resolution for the exception. One is the elimination of the existing sidewalk section, and the other is to go with a reduced bike lane width, which is less than the desirable 5 feet.
So under normal conditions, had it not been for that issue, this would be within sort of normal street building. It wouldn't have come to us. The expansion, I'm just trying to figure out, because I know there was an issue with the bike commission as to the issue of when it comes to us for an exception to complete streets. And that's why it's here. It's for that reason, not to minimize the concerns of ours, but and obviously they're should be considered by us as we're voting on this. But the exception that we were seeking was actually having to do with eliminating, not having a bike lane, or eliminating the sidewalk and not having the full bike lanes.
Correct. It's difficult to say, and it could be more than just the PBC, the Pedestrian Bicycle Commission, that can push for an exception. But at one point, we were proposing to keep the sidewalk that's there, add the sidewalk that was proposed, and eliminate the bike lanes. So it would be bike lanes approaching the intersection, which would then drop, and then you could either ride on the sidewalk, or you could have a shared situation where the bicyclist is riding the travel lane. When we met with members of the Pedestrian and Bicycle Commission, they did not like that. They preferred to have a continuous bike lane, but admittedly, there was differences of opinion for the committee members, whether or not they were comfortable riding in the street, riding on the sidewalk, riding in a bike lane. So it's difficult to say, but I think inevitably we're just stuck because we're eliminating some complete street element,
right,
which would have triggered an exception.
But the resolution before us is whether to allow the exception. Is that basically where we are? So if we were to reject that, then where does that leave the project and
Well, I can let Greg, because he's been so involved in the design concepts, let you know about our possible options if we are eliminating or changing what's proposed from the concept plan. But there's a possibility we may have to come back for an exception again.
Right. Could you explain?
Sure. So this is the concept that we had originally proposed, presented based on feedback from the abutters. This went to the public informational meeting. And essentially the only difference from the plan that we were just discussing, we still had the elimination of the sidewalk, which was not opposed at the public informational meeting. But what's different, you'll notice we did not widen in front of 5 Old Oak. And we didn't widen as much over here. And instead of bike lanes, they're actually, it's a shared roadway marking. So there'd be sharrows as you approach the intersection. The bike lanes would pretty much terminate back here before we split into the 2 travel lanes. And you'd have a shared roadway getting to and through the intersection, and then the bike lanes would continue approximately 400 or 500 feet north or south of Albany Avenue. So that's what we felt pretty good about. We presented at the public information meeting, and then following that, we had some follow-up discussions with the Pedestrian and Bicycle Commission, and they said they really wanted us to push for to redesign, sharpen our pencils, and see if we can incorporate the on-street bicycle facilities, which brought us to the plan that we just shared with you previously. So we're it's between one of those 2 options. If we wanted to retain the sidewalk, that's it goes back to this option. We'd end up with, just want to make sure I have this correct. We'd have bike lanes northbound with the sidewalk, and then southbound would just be shared facility. So again, it's kind of a hybrid plan trying to meet the needs. But each of these plans was met with resistance from some of the various groups, and that's where we ultimately ended up on the final concept that we presented tonight.
I guess one concern on this plan is just a safety issue. We all know to Chris's point, even the addition of, I think adding the pedestrian crossings is a good idea, but I certainly understand the concern raised about a change in this area and the expectations of drivers. But I'm also concerned about the expectations of bicyclists as well, in that we've had lanes here. To take it away, or certainly to have it be a bike lane in one direction and a sharrow sort of coming back, especially in what will hopefully be a better intersection than it is now, but still a pretty scary place for anybody in the street. I'd worry about trying to tell people to sharrow there, especially where there's no sidewalk. It's one thing going northbound to suggest to bicyclists that they go ahead, jump on the sidewalk for a block, especially if it's not being used much by pedestrians. But I worry about the safety concerns of eliminating it and sort of forcing people to make do, especially again where there's no sidewalks. I'm not sure what you would be doing. I don't think we want bikes in that street if we can help it going southbound, and where else they would go, because there's really not much. There really aren't good options. I don't know if you looked at those sort of safety concerns, or if that was some of what was raised.
We've looked at like I said, it went sideways. We were looking at all different scenarios. We were not happy to go back to the Bowers and say, now we're trying to get bike lanes through the intersection, which means we're widening 2 feet in front of your house. That was not an easy conversation for us to have. You can imagine their reaction.
Right.
So again, we're just trying to balance the interest of all involved, and we're struggling. But we thought we came up with the best concept plan balancing all the interests.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Barnes.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, from my experience going through the intersection, generally don't see bikes on the sidewalk. They're not using that sidewalk. They're, on the right side lane. They stop. Usually they look both ways, and even if it's a red light, they'll go right through the intersection. But, they're not jumping on that sidewalk, so I'm not as concerned about losing the sidewalk particularly if there isn't a lot of pedestrian traffic there. You know, and the other thing I would note, you know, we're talking about 2 feet in front of the Bowers. It's, if you're making a left off of Albany onto Mountain heading south, it's 4 feet towards that corner coming into their property. So it's 4 feet down to 2 feet. I understand it's 2 if you're standing right in front of the structure. And if you look on the plan, I mean, it almost looks like the house is almost hanging right over the street. I know you say it's 25 feet, but when you look at the picture, I mean, it looks like it's 10 feet, you know, right there.
It feels like it is. I'm not arguing that point.
Yeah, just, I mean, looking at the picture. And so, you know, and the other comment on bike traffic, you know, heading southbound there, again, they get in the, I guess, the middle lane to queue up if they're going, you know, heading south, because you've got the traffic peeling off to go to the right, and you've got the left traffic as well. And I think the trade-off, even if you had dedicated bike lanes kind of north and south of the intersection and had sharing in between, that there could still be safe passage there. So I'm just concerned that we don't want to let complete streets dictate how we're going to do this project. We want to have a balance of everybody's interest there. And I think the alternative, Greg, that you proposed, I think is more in line with what I had envisioned for the project. So thank you.
Mr. Hart?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for staff as well. Given where we are with the DOT, if council were to refer this back to committee for more discussion, do we have time for that?
Yes, we can certainly go back and express to the DOT and CROG for that matter, where we stand as far as the concept design. If there are additional changes, we'll run it by them. I think ultimately the DOT really just wants to see the additional travel lanes, because ultimately that increases the flow of traffic, vehicular traffic, and then provides a safety benefit as far as the motor vehicle crashes and people jumping over the WLO center line to get into the left turn lane. As far as the complete streets elements that would be modified through a concept design change, as long as we're showing that we have done what we could and are providing some, I think it will still be viewed favorably by the DOT and CROG, but we would have to run it by them. As far as schedule goes, no, we've mentioned to them that we're running into some design issues, and they're aware of that.
So, Mayor, with that response, you know, given the discussion and the issues that have been raised, I would recommend that we carry this item as old business and give us time to review the various options in more detail with CPPS.
Okay, so we will make a motion to refer to committee, I think with, I mean, do we have to do an actionable item? We do, right, with the resolution?
Yes, the appropriate motion would be to refer back to committee at this point.
We will redo the motion rather than to approve, but refer to committee for this.
Second?
item.
Are you making it or I?
I'm happy to make the motion to refer this item to committee. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. Oops. Thank you very much. Thank you both very much. I know this has been a long road and a difficult one. Literal, yeah, pun intended. So, appreciate it. SC, sorry. And now we are on, don't like when the screen goes. Okay.
6D.
All right, I'm in the resolution, so 1 second. It's taking a minute. Okay. 6D is,
Just referring it to TP&Z.
all right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move we refer to TP&Z a resolution authorizing the town manager to execute a lease with the West Hartford Housing Authority.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. 7A, the town manager's report. Mr. Hart.
Thank you, Mayor. So you'll find my report in board docs here. I'll try to move through it quickly. Under council business and meetings, we have an important meeting of the Public Safety Committee coming up next Monday, 6:30 p.m., June 3rd, in room 400. The full council, obviously, are always invited to attend. I would encourage you to attend. We'll be receiving the presentation from Fitch and Associates regarding the final draft of the efficiency and effectiveness study for the fire department. Tomorrow, I'm going to send a copy of that report to the council. We'll post it online as well. If, councilors, as you're reviewing it, if you identify questions in advance of the meeting, please feel free to forward those to me. and I will pass them on to Fitch so that they can be prepared to discuss them ahead of time. Human Services Committee will be meeting, its next meeting will be at 8 a.m. on June 10th, and your next regular council meeting, as you know, is scheduled for June 11th. We will have a public hearing that night regarding the ordinance concerning cottage food operations. Moving on to staff reports, you'll find attached here an informational brochure that Public Works is going to send out with the July 1st tax bills. And the brochure concerns changes to our recycling program as well as our new yard waste program, which we're very excited about. So with respect to recycling, as council will recall during our budget discussions, we're going to return to biweekly collection on our former AB rotating schedule, and the flyer will identifies that schedule. And we're going to be introducing the biweekly yard waste collection service as well. So recycling and yard waste pickup are going to be on the same week, not opposite weeks. They're going to be on the same week. And these programs will both, or these changes will both go into effect on July 1st. The yard waste program will run through October 31st of this year, and in future years, it will run from April 1 through October 31st. So this brochure should be very informative to our residents. Again, we're sending it out in the tax bills, so all residential taxpayers will receive one. We're also doing a larger informational campaign as well.
Can I just ask one question? There was going to be an option for residents to purchase a barrel.
Correct. Yep,
will
and
that be-
we'll make that information available at the same time.
Thank you.
Next item, Cornerstone Aquatic Center. Every year we do a shutdown for some deferred maintenance. This year it'll run from June 3rd through June 14th. And among other projects, we're going to be re-roofing the facility this year. The Park Road I-84 project, making good progress there. The on and off ramps for exit 43, they're tentatively scheduled to be paved on Sunday, June 2nd, starting at 8 p.m., and that'll run until 5 a.m. the next morning on June 3rd. This is weather dependent, and we'll have appropriate signage for the detours in place. Continuing the conversation on yard waste, we're going to conduct the third and final round of the spring. The spring collection will run from June 3rd through June 7th. The new program will go into effect on July 1st. Our police department, tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. here in this room, they're going to hold their annual award ceremony. They'll be recognizing members of the department as well as citizens from our community who've really gone above and beyond in serving the town. Celebrate West Hartford. The 33rd annual event will take place this weekend, June 1st and 2nd. On Saturday, the event will run from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and on Sunday, it will run from noon to 6. I look forward to seeing many of you there. Two other items I wanted to report on. Our library was recently featured in USA Today, the daily publication. Those of you who are familiar with the newspaper, you know they have a section titled News from Around Our 50 States. And the library was featured as its Year of Happiness initiative that they've been working on. So it was neat to see us picked up in that publication. Last item I have before I take any questions, the DOT will be paving a portion of New Britain Avenue, the section from Chatfield Drive to South Main Street. The first phase will begin with milling on June 13th and 14th, and then the actual paving will occur on June 18th through the 21st. So driving will be a little bit slow on that road during those dates, but it's important work that needs to be completed. That completes my report, Mayor. Happy to take any questions council members may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Any questions for the town manager? Mr. Davidoff?
I just want to follow up on one of the mayor's points on the barrel that's coming, that's going to be a 96-gallon barrel. When is the information about the purchase of that going to be available?
At the same time, with the, it'll be going out in the tax bills next month.
Okay. And I think, I just saw it in like very small print on the other card, where it talked about the, what was it? The waste brochure, I guess, on the backside. If you read it very closely, it says, coming soon, you can purchase the barrel. And then under there, because you just said through October 31st, and then under that starts leaf collection. So it really does run through December 31st, correct? Except from the period of November 1st to December 31st, we do it on a weekly basis instead of on a bi-weekly basis, correct?
Correct.
Because I don't think the yard waste would be any different then, correct?
Yeah, and
It's just what we're calling it, is that?
we'll make sure it's clear. I'll review the materials again.
Because, I don't mean to belabor the point, but.
Sure.
I thought yard waste and leaf collection, I think leaf collection would be something that would fall into yard waste collection. So and I don't think the same is true, but, so, I just want to make sure I'm clear in my mind. From April, I think it said April 1st or something, to October 31st, every 2 weeks, you can either have a barrel out there or you can have brown bags, and they'll be picked up as yard waste. Starting November 1st through December 31st, we do our leaf collection, which is picked up every week. It can either be the barrel or the brown bag.
Correct.
Okay. I think it just needs a little bit more clarification, because it was a little confusing to me to just search through that just now.
Unless it's not the barrel for those last 2 months, because that's the new thing. The new thing is having the barrel and the type of truck that you're going to need to pick it up, as opposed to picking up the bags. So I think it's an excellent point, but
I guess
maybe
we
they're
would-
contemplating just bags for that last 2-month period and not barrel.
I'll get an answer to that question.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. The other point, though, is many houses don't receive a bill to their homes. So we're going to have to think about how to make sure that that word gets out.
Yes.
Okay.
And as I said, we're going to have a larger informational campaign.
But a lot of people are not going to receive that. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's almost half, I think. Okay. Anything else for the town manager? Mr. Hart? No? Okay, announcements. Celebrity breakfast. Wow, I did not know it was coming up so soon. Bring your appetite and $15 to Effie's Place Family Restaurant, 91 Park Road, on Tuesday, June 11th, from 7 to 10, and you'll receive your choice of breakfast served by local celebrities. Money raised to help pay expenses for the 21st Annual Park Road Parade, to be held on Saturday, October 5th, 2019. Special Olympic Torch Run. The Law Enforcement Torch Run is coming to Blueback Square on Thursday, June 6th at 5 p.m. Local police officers and Special Olympic athletes will arrive carrying the torch with its flame of home as part of a 3-day annual run through the state of Connecticut to raise awareness of Special Olympics year-round sports, health, and fitness programs that inspire inclusion and acceptance for people of all abilities. The end of the day rally at Blueback Square will feature music and special guests, including Renee Danino of iHeartRadio Connecticut. Blood Drive, the American Red Cross, will be here in Town Hall June 8th at 9:30 to 2:30. Make an appointment, call 1-800-RED-CROSS. Upcoming blood drives at Town Hall will be also held on June 25th and July 23rd from 12 to 5:30. And the West Hartford Art League 85th anniversary fundraiser will be held at the Town and County Club in Hartford. That's May 31st at 6 p.m. If you're an artist, a supporter, or a member of the community, we hope you'll join us in celebrating the 85 years of art, education, and community. Admission is $85 per person. Purchase of tickets, call the Art League 860-231-8019 or email director@whal.org. That's all I had. Is there anybody else that has any announcements? Mr. Barnes?
Yesterday, we had a beautiful day for our Memorial Day parade. It was spectacular. And I'd just like to thank the Veterans Affairs Commission for all of the work that they do, planning and organizing the parade and the ceremony after the parade. Also to Renee McHugh for all of her work and all the time that she puts in with respect to the commission, the parade, and the ceremony as well. to my colleagues for marching and the town manager for emceeing the event. It was very special. So thanks to everyone involved.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. I can't I agree with you more. It was really a moving day, and the parade itself was, I think it was the highest attended parade that I had seen. It was really, completely crowded all the way through it with the 2 or 3 layers of people, which is really exciting to bring the community together for a very important day and then remind us of why this is such an important day. So, again, thank you, everyone, and especially those that have lost somebody in the line of duty and service. So, anything else? Any other announcements? Okay, we have reports from Corporation Council.
I have no formal report. Unfortunately, we do need an executive session to discuss strategy and settlement with respect to pending litigation, following which, depending on the outcome of the discussion, we may need to suspend the rules to adopt a resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Allaire. Any questions for Mr. Allaire? Okay. Appointments, I don't think we have any. Number 12, Ms. Kerrigan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move adoption of the consent calendar.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Number 13, Ms. Kerrigan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move receipt of a communication from Chastity Rodriguez, 5/20/2019, resigning from Substance Abuse Prevention Commission.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. I make a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries.
We had to put that thing somewhere.
Meanwhile, I took selfies with the top.
Aw, you. Nice. You should be proud. I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution. I don't need to suspend the rules, right? No. Do I have to suspend the rules? Yes. I make a motion to suspend the rules to adopt a resolution.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing settlement of the claim entitled McGilpin Douglas H.V. Town versus West Hartford. Be it resolved that the West Hartford Town Council hereby authorizes the settlement of the case entitled McGilpin Douglas H. versus Town of West Hartford, Hartford Superior Court, docket CV 18-609-9889, S for the sum of a pension amount of no more than $22,000 a year, subject to approval of the town's pension board acting in its normal course.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.